Iowa lands its quarterback for the class of 2023. Before we get to that, I want to remind everybody to hit the subscribe button if you haven't already done so. Hit the like button as well. It helps us out. And, of course, year-round content here, Hawkeye content right here from the Hawkeye of the Storm on YouTube. So, Marco Lainez III is Iowa's latest commit to its class of 2023, and he's a good one. A 4-star recruit. According to most metrics, 247 Sports Composite has him listed as a 4-star, 18th best quarterback overall in the country. Rivals agrees with that estimate, again, as a 4-star. Rivals actually has him as the 13th best quarterback in the country for the class of 2023. What does Lainez bring to the quarterback room that Iowa does not already have? We've been talking about the quarterback position ad nauseum, and for good reason, because it has been a point of struggle, I guess you could say, at least these last couple of years, especially this year. Lainez is an athlete. I mean, you watch his tape, and again, I'm not going to ever claim to be a quarterback guru. I'll leave that to Coach Don Patterson. But Lainez is a really good athlete. You know, he's 6'2", 6'3", about 225, but he moves really well inside the pocket. He moves well when he's flushed out of the pocket. He seems to be able to make all the throws, again, over left shoulder, over right shoulder. But again, we're looking at high school tape. I always preface all of my recruiting videos with that disclaimer. We're looking at high school tape, and he does play in a fairly small league in New Jersey. I'm not saying it's not competitive, but I am saying that it's not your big boy schools. And so, you know, you have to look at everything with a grain of salt. But he does look like his athleticism, especially as he moves his feet, is exceptional. One thing that popped out, and that's exactly what I had written down, the one thing that does pop out on tape, not that he can't throw the football down the field, he can make all the throws, but his escapability is something that Iowa has not had, and that Iowa will not have unless something changes as far as the transfer portal is concerned. Again, he'll not be here next year, but if the quarterback room were to stay as it is now, Alex Padilla, Joey Labus, of course, Spencer Petras, and then, of course, Carson May comes in next year. I've heard good things about Joey, and certainly we've seen some escapability from Alex Padilla, but just on tape, again, looking at high school tape, Marco Lainez III is the most athletic, and as far as dual threat, I know he's listed as a pro-style quarterback, which he is, but as far as his dual threat capabilities, he is the most capable dual threat quarterback that I can remember on tape since probably, I mean, before I started analyzing Iowa quarterbacks or looking at Iowa quarterbacks as far as taking an interest in recruiting. So we're probably talking back into the Drew Tate, even back into the Brad Banks era. Now, we have had other quarterbacks here at Iowa. I bring up Peyton Manziel as a perfect example, someone who was fairly mobile and just never really played out, never really worked out. Deuce Hogan, we thought he was fairly mobile. But again, I think Lainez is a notch above those guys as far as mobility. He's certainly, I think, a notch above a guy like C.J. Beathard. Jake Rudock was kind of underrated as far as his ability to move as well, but those guys are not dual threat. Lainez, I think, is a dual threat quarterback. He was his quarterback's coach, also coached Nate Stanley, works with Spencer Petras. I believe he still works with both of those guys. Now, that's not necessarily a endorsement for him. I mean, you may have mixed feelings about Nate Stanley and certainly Spencer Petras, but there's the connection, and I think that certainly had to have helped Ken O'Keefe, and certainly Ken's got roots and connections out east, and he's been able to exercise those recently with quarterbacks. But again, big get for Iowa today. He's from Hun School, so this is, again, Mid-Atlantic, I believe it's a Mid-Atlantic prep conference out there. So again, we're talking, equating that to, if you're from Iowa, equating that to, you know, this level, you're probably looking at, you know, 3A football. Maybe that's being a bit disingenuous, but again, his tape looks excellent. The mobility is the big thing that pops off the screen. As far as other offers, and of course you can find this through Rivals or 247 or whatever recruiting database you rely on. Again, commits to Iowa today, but he did have offers from Illinois, Maryland, Michigan State, so several Big Ten schools. UMass also wanted him. Old Dominion, Penn, Princeton. Obviously, he's got some impressive Ivy League offers there, which tells you that the kid's a smart kid, and you got to have that as a quarterback. West Virginia offered as well. And then, a couple other Big Ten schools were in on him and did not offer. But overall, this could very well be a steal for Iowa. Second straight four-star quarterback they're getting. Of course, Carson May, at least according to Rivals, was upgraded to a four-star status. He'll be here class of 2022. So now you get Lainez and May back-to-back. Theoretically, with both of those guys, you could have some good competition that class of 2023, or that year, I should say, of Iowa football. And, of course, we don't know what's going to happen next year with Labus and all those guys. So you could potentially have a quarterback room of Padilla, Labus, Carson May, and Lainez. Now, chances are not all those guys stick around. That's just how quarterback competition is now in Division I football. But overall, this helps the quarterbacks room. In my opinion, Iowa still needs to go out and look at the transfer portal at quarterback. That's my opinion, and I know not everybody agrees with that opinion. But if we're talking about 2022, I don't think anybody thinks that Carson May is going to come in here and win the job. I'm not saying he couldn't, but I doubt that happens. Again, just looking at Kirk Ferentz's track record as far as who he puts trust in to run the offense, it's likely going to be either Padilla or Petrus. Could Joey Labus take a jump? That's possible. Certainly this competition at quarterback this coming spring needs to be wide open. It needs to be absolutely wide open. So maybe one of those guys latches onto it. Labus is probably the guy that certainly is the guy that's a dark horse now that Deuce Hogan is gone. But certainly this news is good as far as just narrative around Iowa quarterbacks. I mean, now they've got, three four-star quarterbacks. Joey Labus and Alex Padilla, of course, 3 stars coming out of high school. Not saying that neither of those guys could win the job. Star ratings, we understand those don't mean a whole lot. I mean, it's a little bit hype. It helps recruiting services stay alive and stay relevant, and I understand that. But to have 3 4-star quarterbacks on the roster for 2023, assuming Spencer Petras sticks around, regardless of how you feel about Spencer, that is good as far as recruiting for Iowa. And again, we're talking about narrative. It's not just the quarterbacks room. This helps the class in general. That class of 2023 now grows to 3 players now. And again, they needed they need action in the quarterback room. There's no question they need competition. And they will get that with Marco Lainez, who, again, I believe is the best dual-threat kid on tape that Iowa has had since at least Drew Tate, perhaps Brad Banks. And I wouldn't go any further because Brad was spectacular. But certainly an opportunity for Iowa to use his mobility and possibly change how Iowa runs its quarterbacks. Because C.J. Beathard had good escapability, but he was by no means dual threat. Marco Lainez actually ran a lot of plays in high school. I believe his junior year he had over 500 yards on the ground, which is impressive for any quarterback at any level. 81.2% completion percentage for his junior year at Hun School. 1,735 yards passing, 21-2 touchdown to interception ratio. Now again, we always talked about Spencer Petras and how he broke all kinds of Jared Goff's records. So it doesn't always translate. Not saying that Spencer has been a flop, but those numbers are not going to just translate apples for apples at this level always. But again, those are impressive numbers and a big day for Iowa recruiting. It's going to be a big week for Iowa recruiting. There will be a couple more, at least 1 to 2 more late commitments. And they'll likely come on signing day on Wednesday. We won't get into who those individuals will be. You may have an idea of who those individuals will be. I know of at least one who is a lock at this point. But again, that will come likely on Wednesday. And so we'll be here live Wednesday afternoon to cover Iowa signing day. We'll be taking your calls and breaking down Iowa's class that it'll be signing. Of course, we're talking 2022. But again, Marco Lainez commits for the class of 2022, 4-star quarterback out of Hun School in New Jersey. Big day for Iowa recruiting. And again, we'll talk to you later this week on Wednesday here from the Hawkeye of the Storm on YouTube. We'll talk to you soon.